trousers, as in flares. Then I realized that they were embarrassing, so I wore skinny jeans. And then as soon as I tried to change fashion, I was out of fashion. And my son will tell you I've never been in fashion. You know, there's the whole idea of how do you treat your parents? I mean, they go from being these heroes. You know, everything your parents do is just fantastic. You know, I remember my son, Luke tells me the story about, you know, there was a day he asked me, Dad, what's the answer to this question? And I said, I'm sorry, son, I didn't know. He went, there's something my dad doesn't know. Has the world ended? And then you go, my parents know nothing is right. Dad, you're totally wrong. And you go from one extreme to the other. I think about even trying to figure out what your dad's right about. I mean, we had a very embarrassing moment where we don't lie in our family. That's one of the big things we have in our family. We don't lie. So, there's no kids in the room? Okay, all right. We believe in Father Christmas in our house. Okay. So, we taught our kids at Christmas there was a Father Christmas. And Luke comes home one day and he goes, Dad, everybody at my school doesn't believe there's a Father Christmas. But I told them, my dad doesn't lie and he says there's a Father Christmas, so there is one. Little bit of a hard thing. And then later he would find out there wasn't one. I mean, growing up is complicated. You're trying to figure out who you are, how you're meant to look, who your friends are meant to be, what you're meant to believe. It's not easy at all. You know, today we're going to take a look at one man growing up spiritually. Because that's obviously what we're here to talk about today. You know, there are a lot of rights and wrongs when it comes to growing up and fashion and cultures, and that's what we're celebrating today. I do like Z's sort of black Bruce Lee thing going on there with the old haircut. There's some beautiful Nigel, like Chidera's hat here, and I don't know if Pete's Jamaican Ghanaian or whatever, but I mean, it looks cool anyway. And but today we're going to take a look at one guy growing up spiritually to encourage us all to do exactly that. This young man goes through 3 phases in his life. He goes from Mr. Cool, that may be some of you right now, okay, to Mr. Fine, and then to Mr. Sensible, okay. So in Luke 15, verse 11, it's a very famous story about the prodigal son. In Luke 15:11, it says, Jesus continued, there was a man who had 2 sons. The younger one said to his father, Father, give me my share of the estate. So he divided his property between them. Not long after that, the younger son got together all he had, set off for a distant country, and there squandered his wealth in wild living. After he spent everything, there was a severe famine in the whole country, and he began to be in need. So he went and hired himself out to a citizen of that country, who sent him to the fields to feed his pigs. He longed to fill his stomachs with the pods that the pigs were eating, but no one gave him anything. When he came to his senses, he said, how many of my father's hired servants have food to spare? And here I am starving to death. I will set out and go back to my father and say to him, Father, I have sinned against heaven and against you. I am no longer worthy to be called your son. Make me like one of your hired servants. So he got up and went to his father. But while he was still a long way off, his father saw him and was filled with compassion for him. He ran to his son, threw his arms around him and kissed him. The son said to him, Father, I have sinned against heaven and against you. I am no longer worthy to be called your son. But the father said to his servants, quick, bring the best robe and put it on him. Put a ring on his finger and sandals on his feet. Bring the fattened calf and kill it. Let's have a feast and celebrate. For this son of mine was dead and is alive again. He was lost and is found. So they began to celebrate. Meanwhile, the elder son was in the field. When he came near the house, he heard music and dancing. So he called one of his servants and asked him what was going on. Your brother has come, he replied, and your father has killed the fattened calf because he has him back safe and sound. The elder brother became angry and refused to go in. So his father went out and pleaded with him. But he answered his father, look, all these years I've been slaving for you and never disobeyed your orders. Yet you never gave me even a young goat so I could celebrate with my friends. But when this son of yours, who had squandered your property with prostitutes, comes home, you kill the fattened calf for him. My son, the father said, you are always with me, and everything I have is yours. But we had to celebrate and be glad, because this brother of yours was dead and is alive again. He was lost and is found. Now, today, we're going to focus on just the younger brother. And his stages of life is going up. You know, the first stage is Mr. Cool. You know, he tried to be Mr. Cool. And that's my first point, is are you trying to be Mr. Cool? You know, it's something that a lot of young people really focus on, is do I look cool? I mean, let's be honest. You came here, you looked in the mirror. Is your hair okay? Nice haircut, nice hat. It is something that in today's society is a real focus. And I think it was a real focus in every society. You know, but here it talks about how there was a young man who had 2 sons. The young one told his father, give me my share of the estate. So often we talk today, and if there's any parents today, about how our children are in the generation where they feel like they're entitled to things. I don't think there's any more entitled person than this individual. I mean, imagine going up to your father and said, Dad, I want you to sort out your finances so you can give me 1/3 of everything you're worth. What would it take for somebody to say that to their father? You know, and today, most of us in this room come from an entitled generation. We've not gone through hardship. We don't really know what hardship is. So we feel like we're entitled to things that we're really not entitled to. You know, we go to school and we go, well, my friend has an iPhone and an iPad and a this. Now, Mum and Dad, I need one of those. It's my right for you to buy it because everybody else has got one. And yet some of us are maybe from third world countries where we realize, you know, having water is not a right. It's a privilege. But what was it that made this son treat his father with such contempt? Well, I think the answer is in the latter part of the scriptures. It's pretty obvious that he didn't have a really good relationship with his older brother. Maybe he was feeling like, I just can't stay at home. My older brother is suppressing me. He's always mean to me. He's never kind to me. I just want out of here. You know, a lot of people when they're younger just feel incredibly unhappy with the way life is going in their life. Sometimes it's actually is going badly. Sometimes they just go, this is not what I want. And they go through a real rebellious stage where they go, I just need to get out of here. And that's what this guy was actually going through. You know, is that he was thinking like, I want a different life. I don't want to always have to do chores at home. I don't want to have to do what my older brother says. I don't want to have to do what my dad says. I want to get out of here and be who I want to be. I want a cool life, not a boring life that does what my dad says. I don't know if any of you can relate that. I definitely can. You know, I actually went to a boarding school at 8.5, and when I came home at 16 to live with my parents, I was just like, I don't like these rules. I don't like getting out of bed. I don't like all these chores. I mean, what is this that my parents think I should just come and do all of this stuff? And I found it really, really hard. And so I asked my parents just to move out. I can't be at home with you. You're not cool. You're restrictive. I have to come home at some time. I'm embarrassed when I come home and I'm not giving. And you bring old people round that I really don't like. And some of them smell. And you expect me to sit at the kitchen table and give them. I just don't want to do that. They're your friends. They're not my friends. I want out of here. And so I left. And I started to do exactly what this young boy said. He said he went and gave his life over to wild living. Now, it's an interesting concept, trying to be cool in today's society, because it's an unobtainable thing. As soon as somebody says you do look cool, there's some girl over there that goes, stupid hat. And your whole world crashes in, and you're like, I thought I was cool. Or some fashion goes out. Like, we went to America a couple of years ago, and I thought it was in America, you may have noticed, Sean, they wear their socks and then their thongs or flip-flops in with your socks. In Australia, that is the most ridiculous thing, and that is the worst fashion statement ever. So I went to America, and I just laughed my head off. I was like, you're all idiots. What's with the sock thing? Not realizing that in America, that was totally cool. I still don't think it's cool. So I moved back here anyway. But what happened at university, when I went to university, is I wanted to be cool, so I started to figure out who was liked by everybody. And predominantly the person that was the coolest was the person that was doing the most sin. I mean, it was cool to go, hey, I'm getting drunk, come out with me, get drunk, and, we're going to have such a party, and, we're going to steal kegs. In England, we would literally go behind pubs and steal the keg and then smash it and blow it up and then drink all the beer. And that was like, this was cool, breaking the law, not too much was cool, and let's go and do this, and let's get into a party and arrive with those things. The problem with that is then you go to a party where it's an alcohol party, and you're not the cool one anymore, because over there in the corner is the really cool into themselves guys. And they're smoking pot. And they go, yo, man, just beers yesterday. And you're like, it is? Yeah, it's yesterday, man. We don't get drunk, get bad head in the morning. You smoke this, you just get up in the morning, you smoke this, it's just, we're the cool guys. And then they'd really be cool dancers. They'd be up and they wouldn't even move. They'd sit there and go. I'm going, now, I'm a white boy. I can't dance, right? Okay, so I can do that. Man, I can do that. Give me some of that dope. So there I am now. We've gone with the alcohol. We're smoking dope. And I'm sitting in the nightclubs going, yo, baby. I even sort of tried to get cool with a headband. I got a pirate earring and thought I was cool. And everybody's like, because everybody's stoned out their head. They're going, yeah, you're cool, man. Oh, you're cool. Everybody's cool. So I was now in a group where everybody was cool. But then some other people, I go to this party where everybody was off their head on dope. But then they weren't cool because they were everybody's on that, man. And there was a guy in the corner that was also on acid. And he was sort of smoking and doing all, and then when he danced, it was like the rave. And I was like, and everybody went, man, he's cool. I'm like, hold on, I thought we were cool. They're like, no, he's cool now, man. I mean, look at the way he raves. So I said, give me some acid. So I took some acid. And then I was cool at the rave and going to these raves, and we were chasing around at night, 12 o'clock, finding an empty warehouse to set up the music and raving. And then I went to the rave and everybody's off their head. And then, well, there's another group in the corner. And they're doing cocaine. Now they're the coolest guys. So I'm gravitated toward, because now and what you find out with the pursuit of being cool is that trying to be cool leads you into more sin and more sin and more sin. The social disease is not the alcohol or the drugs, it's the people. The Bible says bad company corrupts the character. At 13, I was a virgin, I was of good character. I swore a little, but not really as a kid. But I thought I'm going to be pure until I get married. I'm going to have a decent job. I am never, ever going to do crime. And yet within that sort of 6-year period, I became a thief to get money, to do drugs. Nothing major, but I definitely broke the law. I was stealing things. I was stealing barrels of beer. And my whole life was focused on the next hit. Because, of course, once you do alcohol for a bit, you don't get the next hit. And then you do dope, and it takes more to get the next hit. And I found myself not being very cool. I remember one night waking up, and I'd got so drunk and so stoned, I'd actually fallen asleep with my head in the sink. So I'd actually fallen asleep with my esophagus on the porcelain. And I nearly killed myself. Another night, I was with my mates coming back. I fell over, hit a curb, and I cracked my skull from this ear all the way around to here. Went into hospital. I wasn't really that cool. And yet, I was in this bubble of, I just want to be cool. Until basically, I went, well, none of that works. So I tried my next big hit. I got into work, and I became a workaholic, working 6.5 days a week, thinking, well, if I get my act together, and I just felt unhappy. There was a hole in my heart going, you know what? Alcohol doesn't do it, sex doesn't do it, drugs doesn't do it, so what's left? Be a workaholic. I became a top manager at about age 23, had my own suits and everything, and I was miserable. I was totally miserable trying just to be Mr. Cool. There's a true story about how Eskimos catch wolves. And the way that they catch wolves that actually, are dangerous to their children, etc., is they actually get a knife and they dip it in seal blood and it freezes, and then they dip it in seal blood and it freezes, and they dip it in seal blood and they stick it in the ground. And so the wolf will come and smell the blood. And it's like, wow, food. And it will actually come and smell the blood and find like a blood lollipop, ice pop. And then what happens is it starts licking it. And as it licks it, it gets rid of a certain amount and then starts to cut its own tongue, not realizing it's got down to the knife. And it doesn't recognize the difference between its own blood and the blood of the seal. And what actually happens is the wolf actually ends up bleeding to death. That's what we're like with sin. All of a sudden, we just start with a tiny bit. But when you play with sin, it's like putting your foot over a hill that you just, in the end, you gain so much momentum, you can't stop. Sin is addictive. Smoking is addictive. Pornography is addictive. Masturbation is addictive. All these things are addictive. And at 23, I was like, how did I become this person? I did not want to be this person. You know, university, they say, is where you basically find God or you leave God. It's a melting pot of sin. What you do with university is up to you. But my encouragement to you is stop trying to be cool. The next person he tries to be is Mr. Fine. So back to Luke chapter 11, verse 14. You see, before you become Mr. Sensible, there's actually a stage in between, which is a really weird stage. And it's a stage where you walk around going, no, I'm fine. You know, in Luke 11, verse 14, it says, after he spent everything, there was a severe famine in that whole country, and he began to be in need. So he went and hired himself out to a citizen of that country who sent him to his field to feed pigs. He longed to fill his stomach with the pods that the pigs were eating, but no one gave him anything. You know, he spent all of his money, and now we're here as friends. You'll know this. I remember actually stealing a bunch of money, going out with my friend, and all of his friends had come down to see him, and I paid for the whole meal. I didn't know who these guys were. And I was just trying to impress them. And when I was in trouble, where were they? Nowhere. Friends that want to fall into sin with you won't be there with you when you're in trouble. They just won't. You know, but here he'd been irresponsible with his finances. He found friends that dumped him. And he found out now that he really wasn't much of a catch on the job market. I mean, you imagine him going for an interview. What have you done? Well, my dad gave me my money, so I actually haven't worked before. He was seriously humbled. Did he expect to run out of money? No. Did he expect for there to be a famine? I'm sure he didn't. And yet he found himself in this position which was incredibly humbling for him. The whole analogy here is that Jews, which this man was, would have nothing to do with Gentiles, non-Jews. And one of the things that Gentiles did was they ate pigs, they kept pigs. Jews would not do that. And to understand how humiliating this was, I was actually brought up on a pig farm. Okay, that's a true story. I was actually brought up on a pig farm. And we would actually go and muck out the pigs every Saturday morning. Now, you may not realize this, but it's actually a really dangerous job, mucking out pigs. Because what happens is all their poo comes together and releases this thing called ammonia, which actually knocks you out. So it wouldn't be a strange day for me to go and muck out this poo and then be overcome with the fumes, and you'd have to sort of go, how much can I muck out before I go out and take a breath of fresh air? And then wake up just in pig poo. Because it's really hard. You sort of go, well, can I stay in for a little bit? Can I not stay in for a little bit? And that's how we are with sin. We start to play with it. Sometimes we fall into sin and it doesn't hurt us that much. So we go, it's not that bad. Pete told a great story a year ago about sheep jumping off a cliff. And this is a true story on the internet. And it said there was a bunch of sheep that were scared by a wolf or something. And so what happened was all these sheep ran up to a cliff and jumped over it. Well, obviously, the first few sheep died. Then the next 10 and the next 20. But so many dead sheep filled up that other sheep landed on the dead sheep, rolled off, and lived. So in their mind, they go, hey, you can jump off any cliff because you don't get that hurt. And that's exactly what it can be, you know, oh, well, I slept with a woman and, you know, it wasn't the best, but she didn't get pregnant, and so I got away with it. And we can play with that. And that's exactly what I did until I got a young lady pregnant, and she wasn't even my girlfriend, she was somebody else's. Most new things feel very uncomfortable. You know, but I imagine this guy, you know, there he is in his pig pen, and all his old mates, all his, you know, mates that haven't run out of money, they're walking by him, they go, call him Bob. Okay, hey Bob, how's it going? Fine, I'm just looking after pigs for somebody. You know, I've just been here 5 minutes. Another friend goes on, and you can imagine his lie's getting bigger and bigger. Hey Bob, I've noticed you, last week you've been hanging around the pigs. What are you doing that for? Oh, no reason, you know, just a nice wall, just sitting here, and I'm fine, nothing wrong with me, I'm fine. Because before the stage of going from Mr. Cool to Mr. Sensible, what's really interesting is people are actually okay with living a shameful life. Yeah. And there's a stage in between, and there's a stage of shame. In other words, if I really admit that my life is where it is, I will just feel so ashamed. I remember before I became a Christian, I remember walking down the street and having an evil thought. I can't remember what it was. Maybe it was about some hurting a child or just killing a dog, something so wicked. I remember stopping in the street and going, that is just horrendous what I have just thought. How did I become the person that thought that? And of course it was from a television program, or somebody else had given me a magazine, or I got it from somewhere, because I sure didn't have those thoughts when I was 6 years old. But for me to sit opposite another man and say, this is who I really am, I had to get over the shame of who I really was. The truth of it is, though, God sees us. Yeah, we know it. Yeah. And to open up and actually get honest, we actually can't move on. And it's amazing how we get there. You know, they say if you get a boiling pot and put a frog in it, it'll jump out straight away. But if you get a cold pot and put a frog into it and light it up, you can boil a frog till it's dead and it will never jump out. And that's our life when we go from Mr. Cool to Mr. Fine. Bit by bit, we get ourselves into dangerous situations to the point where we just give up and do nothing about it. What Christianity gives is an opportunity to be somebody different. You know, my hero is Jesus. There was nobody cooler than Jesus. You think about it. He was crucified on the cross and didn't get angry at anyone. I don't know anybody as cool as that. I mean, he was whipped to death. He went, yeah, Father, forgive him. It does not get cooler than that. Jesus walked on water. He was questioned. And they said, well, who should we give this coin to? You know, the Romans or who? He says, well, whose head's on it? Caesar's? Give it to Caesar then. I mean, there's so much about Jesus. You just go, this guy was amazing. The way he loved his mother, the way he loved his friends, the way he was in control of his sinful nature. Yeah. And I looked at Jesus and I went, I want to be like him. Not some blonde-haired, blue-eyed guy on some moving, floating around and, you know, that's not who Jesus was. Right. When they asked who Jesus reminded them of, they said, are you Elijah or the prophet? Yeah. He was a rugged man who had deep conviction. Yeah. That's who Jesus is. And then you look at the superstars of today and how they have adulterous affairs, and that's not who I want to be like. I don't want to be like a politician. I don't want to be like some superstar. I want to be like Jesus. Why? Because he was in control of what he wanted to do, and he did it. Yeah. Now, one of the amazing things is we can't even live up to our own standards. You say, I'm going to get up every morning this week at 6 o'clock. We can't even do that. And yet, because we focus on Jesus, our standards go so high that we surpass even our own standards. Yeah. You know, today, are you Mr. Fine? Is somebody going to come up to you afterwards in the service and you go, hey, what do you think? Do you want to study the Bible? No, I'm fine. No, I'm fine. Don't believe in God at all? No, I'm fine. No, I appreciate what Tegan said. She felt like she was fine, but once she started looking in the Bible, it wasn't like she felt like her life was terrible. But what she realized was it wasn't what it could be. And she looked at Jesus' life and she went, you know what? My life isn't going terrible, but man, it can be so much better. You know, today I'm going to encourage you. Don't be, I'm fine. Get in the Bible and let Jesus change your life. You know, Luke 15 verse 17, Mr. Sensible. It says, Luke 15:7, it said, when he came to his senses, he said, how many of my father's hired hand hired servants have food to spare, and here I am starving to death. I will set out and go back to my father and say to him, Father, I've sinned against heaven and against you. I'm no longer worthy to be called your son. Make me like one of your hired hands and servants. You know, he comes to his senses. He goes, this is just stupid. I'm starving. I'm covered in pig poo. I can't even eat what they're eating. I've run out of money. How bad does it have to get for me to go, Dad, I'm sorry? And he went back to his father, and what did his father do? It said his father ran to him, hugged him, and kissed him. You know, it's really, really frightening stepping into the light to become a Christian. It is, because you're like, I don't know how I'm going to be received. I remember I studied the Bible to become a Christian 27 years ago in London. And what I really liked about society then was there was no Facebook, there was no phone, the internet hadn't even existed, there was no mobile phones. They were about this big. And I studied the Bible with this guy called Patrick. And we got to that moment where he goes, okay, we've got to talk about some life. Because, you know, I was sitting there going, I'm a Christian, puff, puff, get drunk, get stoned, yeah, man. I mean, I was still doing all of that, saying I was a Christian. And then I started to realize I wasn't really a Christian. It was pretty easy to see that. And then we started to get into it. He said, we've got to talk about some stuff in your life. Now, I'd never been open. The only times I'd ever been open with somebody about what was really going on was my mate Dominic, and once I was drunk, and the other time I was so depressed I just freaked out and just told him everything. But with Patrick, I thought, okay, I don't know you and you don't know me. If I open up to you, the great thing is you don't know where I live. If you mistreat me or you do, I'm gone. And it was actually easier to become a Christian with an absolute stranger than it was with my family. Because I started to go, okay, I get drunk. He went, yeah, me too, I used to. All right. I used to do pot. Yeah, me too. I slept with women. Yep, lots of them. I do pornography. And I was waiting for him just to get up and go, oh, I ain't hanging out with you. And he was very humble. He said, yeah, that's who I used to be. And I believe God put somebody in my life that had a very similar life to me. And just went, that was me, that was me. There was a couple that I did, he didn't, and vice versa. But in general, he goes, yep, absolutely. That's who I was. Said, do you want to be like that? I said, absolutely not. He goes, good. You don't have to be. And the hope that came into my life, one, that he didn't condemn me, because that was a big fear, is if I really tell people who I am, no one would like me. And I got myself into the situation where I went, you know what? I can never have a great marriage. Because if I meet somebody that I fall in love with and they find out that I do pornography and do this and this, they will never want to marry me. And that was my reasoning. And so I thought, I've either got to lie to my future wife or just not get married. That's a terrible place to be. And yet when I studied the Bible, I went, okay, I'm going to change this. And I made a decision to become a Christian 27 years ago. You know, you may not be Mr. Cool. My wife I would class as Miss Empty. Kerry, my beautiful wife, she was born on the Gold Coast, born in Penang, but then brought up on the Gold Coast. She plays sport, cricket, you know, just the typical Aussie great girl. So she had money, she was traveling Europe, you know, there's nothing wrong with her life, a bit like Tegan. But she was empty. Because maybe today you don't relate to all my sin. Kerry couldn't. And I'm glad she didn't fall into all of that sin. But you know, deep inside you went, there's got to be more to life than this. Yeah. You know, there's all sorts of people. I've got a friend, Jonathan. Some of us know him. He's an Armenian, he comes. He was Mr. Together but Sad. Jonathan is an Armenian lawyer. This guy jumps out of airplanes for fun all the time. That's what he does. Every place he goes, he jumps out of an airport. You always see him. Came over here, took Jenna out and threw her and Themis and threw them out of an airplane. He's just Mr. Together. But you know what? He's an Armenian lawyer in LA, but his life was so sad underneath. He'd say, you know, I try and give to so many people, love them, and they'd you know, just hurt me. And I go, what's the point in trying? You know, maybe you're Mr. Angry, Mr. Confused, Mr. Numb. I'm done with it. You know, today we're going to have a couple of people become Christians. What I'm very excited about is Beric. Where's the beautiful Beric? Okay. There you go. Right at the back. There you go. Okay. I would think it would be fair to say that Berwick was mishurt. You know, a lot of us come from backgrounds where it's just not nice. Parents aren't always together. And that was, you know, but to see her and study the Bible with her and help her and go, you know what? God will be your new father and we will be your new family. And see her cry. See a part of that. That's what's on offer for those of us. You know, also Jacob. Now this is a really cool story. Where's Jacob? Okay. Okay, Jacob's getting baptized. Now this is really cool. Okay. Jacob, Chinese atheists. But as we were studying the Bible yesterday, you know what we figured out? He comes from the city where the first ever Christian church in China was planted in 635 AD. We were looking this up going, so I made a commitment to him. You and I are going back to this city because I want to go to the place where Christianity was first evangelized in China. I was like, this is so cool. But you know what? He was just Mr. I didn't know. Came to church. I think Eric brought him all the other way around. And it was just like, well, reading the Bible, there is a God. Okay, so 1.2 billion Chinese don't believe there's a God. That doesn't mean there's a God. That doesn't mean there isn't a God. I just need to look into it. And yet to see him, and Dom taught him to pray last week, and I caught up with him, Max Brenner, and they just finished prayer. I said, how'd you feel? Like I'm empowered. Like, just, I'm connected. And you see his face. These are intelligent men studying at University of New South Wales. Yeah. These are not ignorant people. They can see the truth. You know, what is it going to take you to be Mr. Sensible? Maybe you're a little bit into yourself and you're like, well, you know, in my country, you know, stop being Mr. Cool. There is a God. Whether you believe there's a God or not does not change whether he exists or not. Yeah. He totally exists. You know, Mr. Fine, really fine? I don't know anybody that has it together. Yeah. Not a single human being that doesn't need help. You can be a superstar like Tom Cruise, have all the money, have nannies, and yet you still can't keep a marriage together. Right. Everybody needs help. God has created us so that we are needing other people. We need prayer. Yeah. You know, be Mr. Sensible. We will absolutely come up to you today. It doesn't matter how old or young you are, how cool you look, wherever your hairs are at. We're going to go, can I study the Bible with you? We can't make you. But I promise you, becoming a Christian is amazing. Yeah. It heals people. It is the only hope in this world for healing people. The only hope. And you've got to let go of your nationalistic pride, your family pride, your individual pride, because the only thing is you put God in the middle of your life and amazing things happen. Yeah. You know, maybe my story is extreme. Maybe you'll have heart sins rather than outward sins. But take the challenge, be courageous, study the Bible. I'm going to leave you with a poem that could have been written by the prodigal son himself as he found the courage to change. It says, how did I get here amongst those I once refused to touch? Is this the life I dreamed of, the life I wanted so much? Where did I go wrong? What of those who proclaim their love? So much hunger for love from above. Why won't I change? Just admit where I'm at. Would it really be that bad walking over the home mat? Caught between the past and what I could be. If I could just overcome my pride, I might just be set free. Amen.